think you can do it better? And I said, well, I think. And he goes back in and he goes, all right, guys, Chrissy thinks she can do it better. We're going to do one more.
Oh, everybody bring the lights back, bring the cameras back. Chrissy would like to try it again.
And I heard every single person on the set groan, which is not what you want to hear before you're going to do it again.
How's the work?
Exhilarating.
I'm in deep.
I think I said everything the exact same way.
4 weeks into shooting, both the Griswolds and the production team were closing in on their finish line. But a few more hurdles still loomed.
There was a lot of controversy between Dick Zeiker and Harold about how far the car should fly.
He really felt the need to go further than anyone thought.
I said, well, why don't we try for a world record here?
Dad, I haven't seen a car for an hour.
Oh, shut up, Audrey. You don't think Dad knows where he's going?
Thank you, Russ.
You're lost.
Halfway through the 60-day shoot, in the summer of 1982, the travel was starting to take its toll. Tensions were rising, especially in the extreme heat, well into the triple digits.
The hard movie was summer. Remember how hot it was while we were shooting.
Traveling through the Southwest, the vacation team faced increasingly tricky shoots in Utah's Monument Valley, including one ridiculously difficult stunt.
You can tell something's wrong when your stuntman, his nickname is Crazy Dick Zeiker.
When we did this film, it was the early days of kind of doing that stuff. All I had was a helmet, tugboat hat, and a St. Christopher medal.
We thought it'd be very funny to have that clunky station wagon do a very long jump.
Ramis was happy to get the car up in the air, but Zeiker started pushing the distances.
I sort of got this growing sense that there was some debate between Dick Zeiker and Harold about how far the car should fly.
I said, well, why don't we try for a world record here?
He really felt the need to go further than anyone thought.
I told people exactly where I was going to land. I said, if you guys would like to bet on this, just put your money where your mouth is.
A few dollars changed hands among members of the crew.
People were drawing lines in the sand about how far they thought Zeiker could jump that car.
There was a lot of controversy about how dangerous it was.
Zeiker was confident, but there was no margin for error.
We were in the middle of Monument Valley, so if anything had happened, we would have been totally screwed.
We were in the middle of nowhere, so remote that Indians came to the catering truck.
When I was going to do the jump, the medicine man from the Navajo Nation came down and blessed the car, and blessed me, and blessed the stunt.
I stayed out of the Navajo thing, being an Apache.
When everyone was ready and the truckster was lined up, it was time to jump.
I just remember everybody just standing there like, wow, Zeiker is out of his mind.
The car hit that ramp and flew.
Went balls out, as you would say. The thing took off, man.
Way, way beyond what anyone ever thought.
Everyone was just cheering and shouting and screaming when he finished because it was just brilliant.
In the end, Zeiker had jumped the car a record distance, more than half a football field.
The car landed exactly where Dick said he was going to land it.
We jumped at 173 feet.
Everybody was like blown away that he had done that. That was a wonderful stunt. It amazes me how people can do those things. And then, of course, we cut to me and I'm going,
I stabbed my brain.
I love having to start a scene where you're just doing this.
I just got my period.
They made it through the stunt, but now the heat was really on, as the desert sun baked down on the cast and crew.
That was one of the hottest days ever. It was really, really hot. It was like 120 in the shade.
The earth was not earth, it's sand. You can't just run around and move something. It takes always two guys to lift something that one guy could ordinarily do.
Crew guys were like falling out, passing out. It was just like crazy hot, like Arizona, Africa hot. I take my watch off and throw it because it's too hot. Just my wrist is too hot now.
Staggering out of the heat like a desert mirage, Chevy of Arabia.
We had no idea that it was going to come out looking like Lawrence of Arabia. It just cracked us up.
Clark comes reeling out of the desert and into a tourist trap.
He finally staggers up to this gas station, and the car is there, and all the family members are there.
There was a gas station literally out in the middle of nowhere.
Now on that gas station,
it had to be out in the middle of nowhere. We were taking him for everything he had.
Never heard of no one so shit all stupid as you driving off that road.
You must got manure for brains.
And he said, well, how much are the repairs? I'm this pretty blue-collar guy. I go,
How much you got?
What's your sheriff think of your business practices?
I pulled my wallet out. I am the sheriff.
And I'm the deputy.
Yeah, well, I'm from out of town. So, what's the bill?
We've taken from everything he's got. All of it, boy. And I mean all of it. I decided, since I was going to be a mechanic, that I needed to have some grease on me. I had a hard time finding grease around there. Going under trucks and cars. Method. It's like kind of a method acting thing. Recently, I dusted off a VHS copy that I had and looked at it, and I missed a bunch of spots. I get his car working to a degree.
They fixed the truckster, but they couldn't fix old Aunt Edna. Imogene Coca was terrified of car travel.
We had to drive a family truckster everywhere. She was terrified of being in a car.
She was really traumatized by the travel aspect.
She'd have her little hand up, holding herself on the roof, making sure that she was secure, because she was so afraid.
She was so freaked out when they were crossing the mountains, she would lie down on the floor of the car so she didn't have to look out the windows.
So it made perfect sense that when Edna finally passed away, she would do it in the family truckster.
My brother and I pushed her onto each other back and forth, saying,
I'm sick of her lying on me all the time.
we think she's sleeping in the back seat, and she's stiff as a board.
Let her be, she's fine.
She's dead.
Ew, a dead person's touching me.
We went to Flagstaff, Arizona. We shot Aunt Edna through the rain on top of the station wagon.
And it was raining and it was miserable. I mean, they were talking about, like, can we really put her on the roof of the car? It was like, we were trying to go as far as we could go.
Chevy, in his brilliance, takes the purse that was in the car and puts it up on the roof.
They would say a few last words to wish Aunt Edna well on her final trip.
Clark, this is a serious matter.
I don't know what's worse, putting her on the roof of the car or leaving her on the stoop for her family to find her.
It's funny that a movie can, like, have a dead grandmother and a dead dog and people still love it.
With all this going on, it's no wonder Clark loses it.
I think Aunt Edna is the pinnacle that kind of shifts our whole family into craziness.
They're in Arizona, and the family wants to go back home because they've been through so much.
You can tell it's a time bomb about to blast off because the kids are over it. Ellen's now lost her temper.
When somebody finally lets things out in anger, so much truth is spoken.
I think you're all in the head.
Clark had suddenly had a serious psychotic break.
This is no longer a vacation.
It's a quest for fun, and you're going to have fun, and I'm going to have fun. We're all going to have so much fun.
You'll be whistling Symphony Doo-Dah out of your holes.
Who the hell ever says that?
He tried it without the obscenities, and it didn't work at all.
But it is going to give us a rating we probably don't want.
But it was a great moment, and he did it. He really delivered that speech, I thought.
This happens. This is real. He's an everyman. So you got to give every man that speech.
The real punchline there is,
Dad, you want to ask for something?
which comes from Michael.
Don't touch!
This perfect American father had totally come unglued.
It was really a great turning point in the film.
I thought that scene was so true
I gotta be crazy. I'm on a pilgrimage to see her moves.
and such an insight into part of Clark Griswold that needs good psychotherapy, you know?
As cast and crew arrived back in LA for the last 2 weeks of shooting, the late summer was getting hotter and hotter. And the hotter it got, the more tempers began to flare, especially Chevy's.
He was temperamental.
He was just out of his mind almost all the time.
I think he lost it more than one time.
Yelling at lizards and snakes, anything that got in his way.
There was one time when he really went off.
Day 47 out of 56 shoot days, the cast and crew were in the final stretch.
So we were all shooting in the Griswold family garage, loading up the car. Take after take of Chevy putting the luggage on top. I could see he was getting irritated because it was so hot and it was so unpleasant.
We were trying to pull this car out of the garage, making the joke that all the suitcases are going to come off.
Something ruined the take. He was so frustrated.
I'm one of the best swearers there are. I say things that are just so off the wall.
He was standing there holding a small duffel bag.
I don't know if the heat had gotten to me, but I was just angry. I don't know what it was about.
And I thought, oh, he's going to throw it. And I see him look, and there's a light. No, can't throw it at the light.
Just angry.
Camera, can't throw it at the camera. I'm I'm sitting right next to the camera. I go, oh, he's going to throw it at me.
Threw it towards Harold.
And I was so ready for it. I knocked it down with my foot.
Harold's reaction was,
you son of a don't you ever throw anything at me again.
don't throw suitcases at me. Don't do that.
These people have been out here longer than you have. They're just as hot as you are. We're just as uncomfortable as you are.
Jerry, don't throw a suitcase at me.
So cool it, get it together,
He demands respect.
You might have even apologized for throwing something at me.
I mean, I've apologized so many times. It was an empty suitcase.
As the cast and crew soon found out, hot tempers on the set were the least of their problems.
And then we got to the ending, and it's like,
Suddenly all the air went out of the movie.
You can't really tell when you're shooting.
It was painful. Dead silence.
I think the worst is behind us.
Back home in Los Angeles from their multi-week road trip, the cast and crew were heading into the home stretch. The team had one scene left to shoot. When Clark and the family find Wally World closed for repairs, they confront Roy Wally, the owner of Wally World.
Chevy freaks out. He buys a pellet gun. He gets his movie star map and drives to Roy Wally's house.
We show up at his mansion, and he's there having lunch with some executives of his.
Chevy kind of hijacks the meeting. Damn, I want my dime's worth of entertainment.
And at gunpoint, we make him entertain us.
He danced for us. He did a little show for us.
With the final scene shot, they edited the film together and brought it before a test audience.
I remember screening it at Warner Brothers. I think we had a tape recorder in the audience, hoping that there would be some laughter.
For 80 minutes, the audience was hysterical. Loved every minute of the first 80 minutes.
It's the most exhilarating feeling because we've all been working on this thing for, a year or more.
And then we got to the ending, and it's like, last 20 minutes, not a single laugh.
Dead silence. Suddenly all the air went out of the movie.
People came out like, that was not a very funny ending.
We're hoping that because everything was working so well, that the audience would just go along. The audiences are much more savvy than that.
It was as bad as I feared.
They weren't satisfied.
We need to go back and do some things.
They were very specific about feeling let down.
Harold and I both came to the same conclusion. For the entire movie, all they talk about is going to Wally World, and we never see Wally World.
The original ending didn't work. It was kind of a letdown for audiences.
Comedy is a very funny thing. This is what happens. And then you go through your paces.
They'll test the film and see if it actually plays and works to its maximum potential.
We had to end the movie a different way.
You want that payoff.
They thought it would be so much better if we actually went in to Wally World, even though it's closed.
And we don't have to hijack Roy Wally. We have to hijack Wally World.
They knew the answer, but it wasn't an easy one. To give audiences what they wanted, they were going to have to reshoot the ending.
Well, Harold and I went to see Bob Daly, who was head of the studio. We said, we want to go to Wally World and let people see a real amusement park. And he said, how much? I said, another $500,000.
Given the green light for the reshoot, John Hughes was brought back in to do a rewrite and get the Griswolds inside Wally World. They would bust into the park, take the security guards hostage, and get the Wally World vacation for which they'd driven 2,000 miles.
Originally, Wally World was going to be Disneyland. It just got denied. We had to create something completely new.
Everything else was based on real locations that existed. It was more about figuring out how to create Wally World without having access to the real place.
They decided to create their own Wally World out of multiple locations.
The parking lot of Wally World was actually the parking lot at Santa Anita Racetrack.
They don't run the horses in the summer, so they were super cooperative.
That's a very old-fashioned, beautiful California racetrack. But we wanted it to look like Wally World.
We did matte paintings and stuff to create a distant view of the park.
First one's here. In those days, you did the big wide shot of Clark and the family.
What we were shooting in that wide shot was basically the parking lot.
The top of the frame was cut where the racetrack booths were, and then everything above that cut in the frame, that was all painted by hand by people called matte artists.
Created a pretty cool effect, but you can tell now, man, it looks like an animation, it looks like it was drawn,
Since the wide shot of Wally World was just a painting, the rides were in another place altogether.
Then we went and scouted Six Flags Magic Mountain, and when we're scouting, the park's empty. So whatever ride we wanted to go on, all the big roller coasters, let's ride that again. We just had this incredible day with Six Flags all to ourselves.
The key to the new scene was the park's security guard. Harold Ramis had just the guy.
And I knew exactly who should play the security guard, because John Candy used to do a character on SCTV named Paul Fist in Your Face. You talk like the guy in the movie, very earnest and very serious.
That's very important. Always be polite even when you're talking to bad people.
John's agent asked for $1 million. I had a $500,000 budget, so I had to go back and get another $1 million. John was hot at the time. They said, okay.
Once John was in, there was a huge sigh of relief that no matter what this thing turns out to be, John and Chevy together were going to be some sort of buoy to bring us home.
And to play the part of Roy Wally, they wanted a Walt Disney look-alike. They had found a dead ringer in an unlikely source, a famous Hollywood actor who had all but disappeared.
I had seen a picture of Eddie Bracken in a newspaper saying that he was playing in a theater in New Jersey. I looked at the picture and my God, there's Walt Disney.
Nobody really knew, how he was. He hadn't worked in a really long time.
But Eddie Bracken wasn't just any actor. He was an old-time Hollywood legend.
Eddie Bracken was in two of the most popular comedies of the 40s.
He was a big star in the 40s and 50s for Preston Sturges, who was one of the great comedy directors of that period.
He was an amazing kind of song and dance man, old show business guy.
The idea of working with a great legend like that was a total kick for Harold. So the fact that this historical figure was in our movie was just amazing.
With all the details in place, they had 4 days to do the reshoot. But there were just a few small continuity problems.
I go back to LA to shoot the scene. It was literally like 4 or 5 months later, so puberty kicked in like another notch for me. My voice had dropped, and I had like some pimples. I was like seriously in the height of puberty, and Chevy did nothing but humiliate me and bring it right to everyone's attention.
The pimples weren't the issue. Hall's height was.
I had just hit my growth spurt. I'm clearly inches taller, looking even more awkward than I already did for the 95% of the film.
1 minute he's this tall, and 1 minute he's only like this much taller than Beverly and I. He had grown almost a whole head size.
I'd gotten like 4 inches taller. Wow, what was happening there?
By the end, he's like this gangly guy, getting closer to Chevy's height, 6'4" as Chevy.
You can actually see that in the film, which is kind of funny.
Originally they said I was going to be the older sister. But by the end, they really worked it into the film that he was the older brother.
There at the gates of Wally World, Harold Ramis decided to stage a race.
We wanted them to run, but the only way to justify it was for Chevy to say, we're going to park here.
First one's here. Yes, but then why are we parking it? Well, the first one's out. Come on, I'll race you.
So they start running. We did it in slow motion. It worked out very funny. But we had to do it several times.
On the pavement, the heat was brutal.
It was about 105 degrees, and the pavement was like 130 degrees. Chevy had heat frustration. Michael Hall actually got a heat stroke and had to go to the hospital. It was a costly scene in human terms, but it was pretty funny the way they run.
At the end of that run, Chevy let out his frustration on the moose.
We finally get to the amusement park, and there's this moose, and it says,
"Sorry, folks. America's favorite fun park is closed for repairs."
And by the way, the voice of Marty Moose, Harold Ramis.
Sorry!
And Chevy gets so angry he punches the moose's nose.
One of my favorite times was hitting Harold. Bam! Then he goes, "Sorry, folks."
Clark, what are you doing?
Now the movie was hanging in the balance. They were about to do the last shoot inside the park, up on the roller coasters themselves. But would this reshoot save the film?
Your worry is, will people like it as much as we think they should?
We had no idea how funny it was going to be.
You never know what's going to reach an audience. We have no idea.
Sorry, folks, park's closed. The moose out front should have told you.
It was the end of 1982, and the entire production of National Lampoon's Vacation was teetering on the brink. They had just 4 days to reshoot the key final scenes.
We kidnap John Candy, make him take us on all the rides.
We're not really violent people. This is our first gun.
No, it isn't. You couldn't do any better than John in that role.
But when they got inside Wally World, It wasn't only John Candy's security guard who was freaking out. Several cast members had a problem with the rides themselves. Chevy didn't like roller coasters.
I don't like getting to the top of something and looking 1,000 feet down.
Beverly didn't do rides at all.
My double did most of the roller coaster stuff for me. I get sick of roller coasters.
Even the freshly cast John Candy had issues when it came to the amusement park.
The reason I was in that scene in the front car with him is that no one else could fit with John in the front. Chevy was a very big guy, and John was a big guy. Even Dana didn't fit.
Finally, John Candy jammed himself in, and they took off. Eddie Bracken was supposed to enjoy one last ride with the family.
The script called for him to forgive us and also enjoy some of the rides with us. I said, now look, have you been on the roller coaster? No, I don't care about that. I've been doing this all my life. I just want you to take a very slow climb, and then when you get to the top, it's very frightening. He said, I said, okay, I'm just, warning you. Finally, going up the ramp. He's still playing Roy Wally, and I'm still Clark. And just as we get to the top and look down, he goes, oh, That was one of the great moments. Eddie claiming that everything is fine, he's been doing this all his life, and then just completely losing character. Just never been on one, obviously.
We shot that roller coaster sequence, and that became the new ending.
The 4-day reshoot was wrapped, but after the failure of the film at the previews, the question now was, would it make a difference?
Your worry is, will people like it as much as we think they should?
We had no idea how funny it was going to be.
We didn't know where this was going.
You never know what's going to reach an audience. We had no idea.
In the edit room, they were playing with the last act.
You edit it and improve it even more, and you hope the movie will translate to audiences.
The original ending was not satisfactory. If there's one thing Harold wanted to do, it was portray this as a real story.
There's so many funny things in it. There's so many things that make me cringe because they don't really fit together.
Meanwhile, the editing team was also trying to add in music to amp up the energy in the film.
It was at a time in Hollywood where you couldn't have a movie without a main title song and an end title song. That was what everybody was doing. And so we were looking for somebody who might write a main title song.
They turned to one of the hot bands at the time, Fleetwood Mac. There was just one problem.
They were sort of not together. Somebody said, what about Lindsey Buckingham? And I think initially it was, well, Lindsey Buckingham, what about the rest? Can't we get the whole band?
But once they actually heard his compositions, they decided to give the Fleetwood Mac songwriter another look.
Harold and I started listening to his solo stuff, and it was amazing.
Lindsey got it and knew what we were going for.
I remember going to his house in Bel Air with Harold, and he was playing all the instruments. He basically a one-man band at that point. Turned out he didn't need the rest of the band to create incredible music.
They hired Lindsey Buckingham, and he got to work on Vacation's theme, Holiday Road.
You know right away as soon as you hear that kind of where it's from.
Holiday Road, it was fantastic. It gave the movie the energy that it needed.
To hear Holiday Road was certainly just one of the high points.
Holiday Road.
Oh, Holiday Road.
Puts me in the best mood.
Finally, the producers felt all the elements of a successful film were coming together. They hoped the new ending would save the picture. But no one was exactly sure how the movie would do, especially given the edgy comedy.
We knew going into it that there were people who were going to have a little bit of a problem with it. But if it played comedically well enough, then hopefully it would transcend anyone's sort of concern.
I think the studio didn't realize what they had.
It's hard with succeeding in Hollywood. Everyone always wants you to fail.
I just remember watching the movie for the first time, all of us on the edge of their seats.
On July 29th, 1983, Vacation premiered to less than glowing reviews. Critics called the movie a bad trip, a dead end. They told audiences it was no picnic. It looked as if the holiday was over. But while the film didn't appeal to the critics, the audience had a much different reaction. As more and more people started coming out, Vacation pulled in over $8 million, making back its budget in the opening weekend.
I was on Martha's Vineyard rewriting Ghostbusters when Vacation opened, and I got a call from the studio saying we had a really good weekend.
When I was in Italy, my agent called me saying it's a hit, and I'm going, it's a hit? Nobody imagined that it would have the success that it did.
It hit #1 at the box office. And it would become one of the all-time favorite summer pictures.
It was a funny movie for laughs. The LPM quotient, laughs per minute, it was pretty high.
It's a great fantasy to have an amusement park all to yourself. No crowds, just ride whatever you want when you want to.
And it worked. I mean, it really worked. People would talk, and, people got into being a Clark or not a Clark. How about that Christy Brinkley? And there were so many elements.
I remember thinking, I'm glad this actually turned out as funny as the script read.
We put that ending on, and then it really felt like, oh, this is working. This is what the audience paid to experience.
Almost immediately, it became clear that all sorts of viewers were enjoying this little road trip.
I remember Harold was on the Letterman show, and Letterman says, funny movie, how about that car salesman scene? Whoa! And I bolt up from the couch. I'm mesmerized. Oh my God, they're talking about me.
And in the aftermath, this one movie would change the lives of many of its cast and crew.
Yeah, I had no idea that it would become, a franchise.
I don't know if anybody could have seen all of the sequels and everything coming.
Nobody knew. That was just like a wonderful surprise.
We could have gone anywhere we wanted to this summer, But when I asked my kids, when I said, kids, you remember when I said, where would you like to go this summer more than any place in the world, huh? What do you say?
Why?
Shut up, Russ.
In the weeks following its release, it became clear that what started as a small offbeat comedy with no major expectations had become something very different. Traveling together, the Vacation team had bonded in a seat-of-the-pants adventure. And this little road trip ended up in a destination no one anticipated.
Yeah, I had no idea that it would become, a franchise.
I don't know if anybody could have seen all of the sequels and everything coming.
Nobody knew. That was just like a wonderful surprise.
National Lampoon's Vacation didn't just become a cult classic. This low-budget movie would launch a franchise of a half a dozen films and would turbocharge the careers of everyone involved. Harold Ramis became a major comic filmmaker, with a string of winners from Ghostbusters to Groundhog Day.
Started working on Ghostbusters after that, and so for several years there, I thought, well, we can do no wrong.
Once we'd both seen Christy Brinkley in underwear, we started making movies together. We did a movie called Club Paradise with Robin Williams and Peter O'Toole. Then we went off and did Groundhog Day, a bunch of other ridiculous things.
Chevy Chase would go on to be one of Hollywood's biggest comic stars, in a number of hits like Fletch, Spies Like Us, and the Vacation series.
I still get people reacting to me because of particularly the first one. I think that movie stands out for people who see me.
I can't really think of anybody else who could have done that any better than Chevy.
Chevy could pull stuff off that I don't think a lot of other guys could have done.
Chevy made so many great movies. This was really the foundation and the highlight for his career, which is why he ended up back on television. Sorry, Jeff.
I don't know why, but I keep turning down things like Ghostbusters. I do something called Ghost Milk now.
Today, Chevy's a hit again, starring in TV's Community. Vacation would also launch the career of the late John Hughes.
I really can't talk about Vacation without talking about John Hughes, because it did start with him.
His career was incredible after Vacation. Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Home Alone. He was just incredibly prolific.
John Hughes will remain probably the greatest voice of youth in American comedy. What a talent.
John Hughes was, I think, the most amazing observer of teen life in the United States. I don't think anyone has ever come close to doing it on a consistent basis like him.
John Hughes went on to create his own genre, and Anthony Michael Hall was his protagonist.
Anthony Michael Hall became a teen heartthrob in John Hughes' movies.
Pretty in Pink and Weird Science. Genius.
I don't know what he saw in me. I think he was great at allowing people to just go from there, and kind of give them their wings.
John Candy's career would get an extra boost before his untimely death.
John was an incredibly gifted actor. It wasn't just jokes. It was all character stuff. His comedy came out of a real place.
He didn't play like Oliver Hardy off of his heaviness. He played like a dancer, and he danced with his voice.
Candy would go on to win a special place in the heart of audiences. From Splash to Home Alone to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
He was just a legend. Great guy. Really, really a great person.
I mean, he was funnier than hell, and you had to love him.
For one small film, Vacation would have a remarkable impact, kickstarting so many careers, like Jane Krakowski's.
I do think there are certain parallels between the comedy I'm doing now on 30 Rock with Vacation. I think it's very similar kind of comedy. The improvisational sections that were in the movie, we're still bringing that to 30 Rock into the jobs that we do today.
Everybody was kind of novices.
National Lampoon's Vacation was the first movie that I ever developed that was made at Warner Brothers. So it's near and dear to my heart.
By the time we did Christmas Vacation, he was head of the studio.
Beverly D'Angelo would go on to a long career in dozens of film roles, most recently starring in TV's Entourage.
A lot of people have been watching Entourage. But Alan Griswold and the Vacation movies are the ones that have touched the most hearts.
And because of their time on the road together, many of them became long-term buddies, like Miriam and Beverly.
Beverly is just such a great broad.
And we got to be very good friends. In fact, when I had my kids, I called up Miriam and said, I'm here alone with 2 4-pound twins. You better get over here. And she came over.
And that happily married couple, Clark and Ellen, they're still together.
Beverly is so funny and so talented. I mean, maybe one of the greats. And she can sing, she can do anything with her very lovely breasts. Just kidding, Bev.
We're very, very good friends. I love him. He calls me his other wife. I've actually had a longer relationship with him than anybody else who I've been married to or lived with. Longer and more consistent.
28 years later, Vacation is still the little engine that could. The road trip film that resonates with its audience and its cast.
I've done close to over 70 projects now. I did Beverly Hills 90210. National Lampoon's Vacation, playing Audrey, unequivocally is the #1 thing people recognize me for.
It was the kind of comedy we all wanted to do.
To make a comedy like this that started my career and that has really held up, that people love, is a great feeling. It's a real honor.
People still come up to me and say, hey, were you guys at Vacation? I'm like, yeah, I was.
There were so many elements that brought people to that movie and made them watch it again. Frankly, I think it's good comedy. And it has a story you want to follow, and it has your everyman, and it has the jealousies and the norms of sort of a normal kind of life.
But I think it's that combination of very adult, hip, smart, edgy comedy with a very classical American form.
I, sort of watch myself through the fingers, when my scenes come on, it's like, ah. But I'm so thrilled to be a part of it.
I thought I was getting involved with kind of an off-the-beaten-path picture. I didn't think that it was going to be a cornerstone of my connection with the public for the rest of my life.
Not long ago,